Thank you so much, Sam, and it's a pleasure again to be here. It's Niger, so get that. So I've spent over almost 10 years of my youthful life advocating for quality education and working with children living with disabilities and in communities that have been orphaned by HIV/AIDS, while ensuring that their rights and those of women and girls are protected and respected. I would just ask you all to close your eyes for 1 second, for a few minutes. Think of that young teenage girl, the one you love or admire so very much. Doesn't she deserve the right to quality education? Isn't her education worth fighting for, irrespective of where she comes from? You can now open your eyes. In my many years traveling across Africa, I've seen pain, seen suffering and despair on the faces of children, especially child brides. Every 7 seconds, a girl younger than 15 is married off. To them, the only difference is an education, one that they will never get. I stand here today to tell you the stories of 3 amazing girls. On the screen, you would see is 12-year-old Aminatu I met in rural Niger. She had just arrived at the home of one of the community health workers where we were. She looked very tired, worried for her sick son. She could barely breastfeed her own son. As I watched little Muhammad cry, he looked so frail, desolated, and was shivering. She could barely remember the age of her sick son when asked. She didn't utter a word. The next, okay, sorry. So on the next slide is 13-year-old Ramatu. She came in with her severely malnourished child. I could barely make out the gender of her baby. Ramatu could barely smile. She looked so worried and confused. As I processed all of this, it dawned on me that both Ramatu and Minatu were children themselves. And despite the free primary education in Niger, their education has been completely snatched away from them as a result of child marriage, whose prevalence now is at 87%. Lastly, you're gonna meet Betila from Cameroon. At 4, she started facing difficulties working, and her parents could barely afford any medical cost. Her condition became so bad that it started affecting her speech. Despite her condition, she was still forced to carry out chores such as fetching water, firewood, and work in the farms. For 17 good years, she was denied an education just because of her physical inability, until 2 years ago when we intervened. Today, she learns how to walk, to talk, and to write again. These are some of the stories of over 62 million girls who are not in school and learning, and whose education are just as precious as ours. Niger is one of the 35 crisis-affected countries where 17 million children aged 3 to 18 need educational support. The fertility rate in Niger is 7.6 births per woman, which has exacerbated the out-of-school crisis. Poverty, discrimination against girls, insecurity, parental illiteracy, early marriage, poor quality teachers, overcrowded schools are some of the major challenges facing the educational system in Niger and most of Africa. Schools in neighboring Nigeria are being bombed, some militarized, young boys recruited as child soldiers, girls being trafficked, raped, or married off before their 15th birthday. While in Niger, Boko Haram had displaced many millions of people fleeing insecurity in Nigeria. The Difa refugee camp is host to about 213,000 refugees, including refugees from neighboring Mali. Today, there are 263 million children and adolescents who are not in school and learning. And half of the world's 1.6 billion young people will be out of school or not learning by 2030. Africa has 128 million school-aged children, yet just 17 million will never attend school, while another 37 million will learn so little that when compared to their out-of-school peers, there isn't any striking difference. Can you imagine right now as we speak, 1 out of every 3 children under the age of 5 is suffering from irreversible consequences of malnutrition, which is responsible for half of all the deaths under 5 in children. This is the future of a generation whose contribution is vital for Africa's growth and social development. It is likely to remain stagnated, and the cost of not acting now could be very catastrophic. According to a 2015 Brookings Institute, it's estimated that by 2030, over 50% of the world's 2 billion children will not be on track to acquire basic skills at secondary schools. Hence, the need for investment in key skills to drive economic growth. With the current pace of change, it will take 100 years for both boys and girls in poor countries to catch up to their peers in rich countries. To meet these demands in the near future requires innovation within the educational system, which has become so obsolete, especially in developing countries. Teaching is therefore at the heart of the learning crisis for Africa's economic success, one we cannot afford to miss. And just like Aminatu and Ramatu, millions of girls all over the world continue to face many barriers, ranging from gender-based violence, lack of access to safe toilets, and social and cultural norms that prevent girls from attending schools. Overcoming these challenges requires just education. Investing in education is the most cost-effective way to drive economic development. It increases skills and opportunities for women and men. It unlocks progress to all sustainable development goals. And it's a broker for peace. For every additional year a girl spends in school, her earning power increases by as much as 25%. Therefore, investing in health, the empowerment of well-being of women and girls, unlocks the untapped potential. It creates a ripple effect and yield multiple benefits for themselves and for their families. In my country of Cameroon, despite government's effort to put every child in school, the attendance rate is just 65%. Over 80% of the teachers say budgets don't arrive on time, they lack school materials, they lack supplies to facilitate learning. According to Transparency International, 50% of primary schools in my country have poor infrastructures. Only 19% have toilets. Only 30% have access to tap water. And only 30% have enough tables and benches. Through my organization, Hope for Children Cameroon, we provide educational materials and computers to primary schools. We've provided support to over 1,300 children to help them become creative, to reason, and to solve complex problems. We are constructing toilets. I remember last year, the picture on the bottom left is a toilet in one of the schools. There was a hole that was dark, and kids had to put a ladder to go in and defecate. So with support from the Commonwealth Trust, we're able to construct a water sustainable toilet for these children, which is going to help 200 kids in this community. We are teaching kids how to grow local foods in a more sustainable way. We are also engaging fathers and boys in dialogue by breaking some of the stereotypes that affect women and girls. Through our initiative, school absenteeism has dropped by 27%. This is one of the schools we just built. It was handed over to the community last December. We need to invest in teacher training, personalized learning, and support for teachers with livable wages. We need to incentivize parents so that their children, especially girls, can stay in school. For every additional year of school a girl spends, an additional 10% in health earning is acquired. Unless African governments and international community work in close partnership to raise educational standards, the future of millions of children will be wasted one we cannot afford to risk. We must strive to leave our country with smart and better kids to carry it forward. Our world today is characterized by injustice, one where only 8 people in the world hold the wealth of the global poor. How is that even possible? For too long, our leaders have failed us. Some are putting self before climate. For too long, our institutions have deprived the needy and the powerless. For too long, our cultures have discriminated against the vulnerable and the oppressed. If we, the young people today, are too young to lead or ignite change, as they say, then we must be too young to be victims of war, conflict, and natural disasters. Therefore, we need to invest in new ideas, one that meets the needs of the global poor. To end, we need the church more than ever today to continue to stand up for the voiceless, the marginalized, a more inclusive institution. My question to everyone today is, what is your purpose in life? What will you be remembered for? What good will you bring to the world? As a proud feminist, inspired by my mom, a single mother of 4 boys, who toil each day and night to send us all to school, I call on everyone here present, in the words of John Wesley, who reminds me each day, do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, and to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. Go and create a world you want to see. Go and be the peace. Thank you.